All right, hopefully everyone can hear us. My name is Shawn Metcalf. I'm the city administrator, and with me is the Director of Environmental, Marty Stange. And this behind the scenes is basically an opportunity for residents that are interested in learning about what Marty does and what his staff do, and just to ask some questions. And I'm going to try and ask different questions that hopefully a resident would ask or would be wondering about his department. And so I'll go ahead and start us off. And I'm putting a timer of 15 minutes so we don't go too long. When we get to 15 minutes, we'll do like one final question and then we'll finish up. All right. So Marty, can you tell residents just a little bit about you? Like how long have you been at the city?
I started work here at Hastings, with Hastings Utilities in 1989, February 28th, I think it was a leap year that day when I started, and been here ever since. Born and raised west of Grand Island in western Hall County near the town of Carroll, so somewhat of a local boy, but moved south of the Platte, and that's where we spent the last 34 years here. So raised family, and
That's a long time with the city.
yeah,
It really goes by. It doesn't go by fast or slow or sometimes full.
It depends on the day, but I've heard several people say, what makes it go by fast is the people, and sometimes it's the people that make it go by slow. So that's just
Fair.
inherent to the work that we have.
So for people watching, like what is the Department of Environmental? Like just some of the key things or highlight the big items that you do.
Well, I'll kind of start back just a little bit of what I did before I became the environmental director, but I was basically the senior civil engineer for Hastings Utilities, which meant that we were doing all the permitting, a lot of design work. So that permitting involves water, wastewater, the power plant's emissions. We took over issues related to material disposal, waste disposal, that kind of thing. We deal with PCBs and radiation, lead, radon, all those things. But I got hired in 1989 because I had some experience with groundwater, and so I did a lot of Superfund work. And so dealt with Superfund all those years. Still dealing with it. It just doesn't really go away very fast. So once we had some reorganization, they determined that I needed to move as a director in that, and now I oversee the landfill as well. So which is an obvious connection to all the landfills that we got here in Hastings and so forth. So we got a staff of 3 other people, Jenny and Roger and Marina, and they've been with me quite a few years. Roger's the youngest, but Jenny has been with me for close to 20 years, and we just get the work done related to all that permitting and just kind of the experts in that field. So not sure how I became an expert, but it happened over the years.
A lot of time in practice there.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you and your staff do in environmental that would make an impact for residents? And the first thing that comes to my mind is water.
Yeah.
Could you tell them some of the things that you've done there because I'm sure they want to know what is it that you do that impacts their daily lives?
Yeah. A major part of my work was to support all those utility functions, and of course water's been a big issue. And that part of what the utilities does, is impacted by the groundwater contaminations that we see upgrading of the city, as well as the landfills, and the Superfund sites we have in town. So it was naturally to just be all part of that. And water's really been my career choice, and I really like water issues. But what we've done is we've done a lot of planning to figure out, how do we protect the water system from the contaminations coming in. We've developed the Aquifer Storage and Restoration Project, which is now protecting the city of Hastings. We do a lot of work with NRDs and NDE, the Department of Environment and Energy, University. We're doing things to help protect the regional aspects of the groundwater contamination, because water doesn't know corporate boundaries. It flows from the northwest to the southeast, and they will flow right into the city of Hastings. And so we're part of that whole network in there. So it involves other communities and other agencies, like I noted. So
yeah, and so in Hastings specifically, what are the issues that are maybe like the most concerning that getting into our aquifer, and what are the things like we're currently working on, or just some of the things that residents might not even realize that are water issues that we have?
yeah, it's been amazing in the 34 years that when I got here, we were dealing with Superfunds. We had all of the vault organic compounds that's in there. So things like carbon tetrachloride and trichloroethylene, those are big, words. But basically there were solvents or pesticides that were being used by the local industries, and they got into our landfills. Sometimes there were just accidents that occurred, tanks that spilled or whatever.
There was fun sites or where you're trying to pull that out of our potentially getting into the aquifer. Right?
Yeah, well, it's actually in the aquifer. We're cleaning up the aquifer as well as what's in the ground. We've been doing that for quite some time. And when you look at that, that's a pretty well-defined area. Of course, the naval ammunition depot, they've got explosives and as well as a lot of organic compound. But even a bigger challenge is the nitrates and the uranium that we're dealing with, because that stretches from here clear to the Platte River up towards the Shelton area and so forth. It's huge. So you look at those, the plumes here in Hastings, they're kind of moving out, but we got to protect people downstream. That's important as well, but we've got contamination coming into it. So it's been complicated at times to get that done. But I would say that one of the successes was a well D project that we did. I was at a meeting with the Superfund folks, with the different responsible parties, and we were noticing that a lot of the contamination was moving towards the energy center because it's using a lot of water, so it's pulling that dirty water out. And it turns out that the energy center does a really good job of cleaning groundwater because we use cooling towers, and they're basically glorified air strippers is what they are. And once we brought that, we studied it, we realized, yeah, that's really effective, and that is the treatment of choice that EPA had. And so we elected to put in one additional well to capture more of the contamination rather than just letting it spread out there. And we call that well D, because we had wells A, B, and C. We're not really forthright in coming up with different names, but it's just that part of it. And we actually got an award from EPA on that, and the good news is we've cleaned that aquifer up, and quite frankly, nobody thought we'd clean it up as quickly as we did. So by utilizing our existing infrastructure, utilizing water that we need to pull out of the ground, we ended up making lemonade out of lemons. I mean, it's just kind of a cool thing that we've done. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's hardly anything more important than making sure our water is safe. And like one of the biggest things that I've heard is the nitrates. I've just heard that so much of, you have to stay under a certain level of nitrates, which we are. Your water's in a good, safe condition. And I also want to give you a plug for the aquifer storage restoration. I mean, what a lot of people I'm sure don't realize is that system replaces, in most cities we have a water treatment facility, and we don't have that in Hastings, and those water treatment facilities are incredibly expensive. I mean, we're millions and millions of dollars to have those, and so it's important to know because we don't have that, the water rates can be lowered, and so that's due to what you all have done here.
Well, and two things. What was driving us on a lot of the groundwater management, I'll call it that, is how can we beneficially use the water even if it's contaminated? There are uses of water that's not always potable. In fact, potable use is a very small percent of the water we use out of our aquifers for irrigation, industrial use, those kinds of things are a greater amount. And so that's where the well D came in. We said, well, let's just use the contaminated water first before we use the clean water. That helped clean it up. We're doing the same thing with this aquifer storage and restoration. We're basically saying, what we want to do is, we know there's high nitrates out there. That's not fine, but we understand it's there. It's a legacy issue that we have to deal with. But farmers can use it. They can use it for irrigation, and that's fine. What we need to do is protect the drinking water supply. So what we're doing now is we're collecting some of that contaminated water, cleaning it, and re-injecting it in there, so we have a supply of water just around the city that's doing it. So I like to call it, it's kind of like creating a moat around the city that's doing that. But by managing the wells, we're making sure we take the clean water, but leaving the dirty water either for that treatment or making sure that we leave it out there so it can be used for beneficial use in its agriculture. So it's just a matter of more management is really the key, and it really goes back to finding the highest, best use for all that water that's out there, and don't be wasting clean water on non-clean water or non-potable purposes. And so that's really what the driving force we had all along. It's been really good. And you're right, the cost of water treatment was estimated about 75 million. We've spent about 15 million now up to this point, and that 75 million was a decade ago. Yeah. And so when you look at that, that's huge. And the operating cost is still high on both of them, so you still have that. But at this point, we're not wasting a whole lot of water because we are trying to take that and reuse that water the best that we can as well. We're using it for irrigation. It's just higher nitrates, and then we do have to send some of it through wastewater treatment just because of the volume that we deal with. But still, it's a very good use of the existing resources, managing the existing resources to the highest that we can, and it saves money.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing people might want to know is like, how much water does the city have? Or because I kind of know the answer to this one, but some places in some cities they have difficulties certain years to they're trying to be very careful with the water that they use and stuff. But that I understand is not so much of an issue here because of the aquifer.
Yeah. So it's kind of who's ever at the lowest end of the bathtub is kind of what's happening here.
But towards the beginning of the water stream, right?
So what's happening is the Platte River supplies about half of our water, flows into the region here, our aquifer. And we also have half of our water that gets recharged comes from overland or from water that falls on the ground. But that also includes irrigation, so that's where it kind of gets complicated in that we are recycling this water through the root zones, so that's how the nitrates are getting in there. Because we're close to the Platte River, we get that benefit. So even communities like Kearney and Grand Island, they have their wells sitting out there. Lincoln same way, Omaha same way. So the Platte River is really the lifeblood of Nebraska. It's just that there are other communities that still get that benefit. But it takes about 50 years to get from the Platte River to us. But it's still coming as long as there's water.
That's crazy.
But even when the water, the river's dry, there's still water underneath that sand and it's still moving towards us. But the issue is we're not here alone. We're here with other communities, with irrigators. So as we get further southeast, unfortunately, we've been mining it faster than it can recharge in some areas in the NRD, the Little Blue NRD, and even the Tri-Basin and the lower Little Blue NRD. They are seeing areas where they have groundwater quantity issues. And if you have less water, quality issues tend to drive into because you got less to dilute the contaminants with, so it's a compounding issue. So we're part of all of that. I have to say, we do a really good job of not overusing our water. We are very competitive. We're many years we put on less water than what the farmers do, but the farmers are getting better. And we've supported those activities. We've supported best management practice. Putting in water meters, I know, is not a likable thing by farmers out there, but until they knew how much they were really using, it's hard to control. It's a management tool. And just like the city of Hastings, we've got records that go back to 1915, and I can tell you how much water we've used every year since that. And we know it was probably metered before that, but somehow the records were lost between 1886 and 1915. So I wish I could find them, but I think they just somehow got lost.
Yeah. So what about switching gears into like air pollution, sort of, because I know like right now we even have a project right now with the bottom ash and we have some regulation things that we're trying to keep in compliance with. So could you tell people about the Wayland Energy Center?
Sure.
And basically you do things to make sure that our air quality is good.
Yeah, so the air quality also has to do with land application of materials. So Out at the Energy Center, the 2 units, we do recover out of both units fly ash. So all of the particulates from the burning of coal. So think of coal as 99% carbon and 1% dirt, because that's really what it is. There's just some contamination in there, and it's just dirt. It's just what blows in on that. And when we burn all the coal out of it, or the carbon out of it, we end up with 99% burnt dirt and 1% carbon. And we'd like to get that last 1% out, and we do a pretty good job of doing that. So really what we got is that dirt that's left over, but it's been burnt. So a lot of the, not organic, but the metals that are in that dirt are now oxide. But that's just what happens when you burn it. Now, there are regulations that we have to live by.
There's our 15-minute mark.
All right, I'll make it really quick.
5 more minutes.
So we do we do a lot of work with marking our fly ash, and so we've taken a product that a lot of times is just landfill. We actually found beneficial use for it because it's used in concrete, roadways, and so forth. And we also, on Unit 2, we scrub the SO2 out so that we don't have the acid rain out there, and that actually makes a sulfur-based fertilizer that we can land apply, and we're permitted with the Department of Agriculture to do that. So again, this idea of taking kind of waste, how can we put it into a beneficial use? And I'm happy to say that we don't have landfill like some power plants do, because our goal is to have none buried. We all want it into the marketplace as a product. So part of what I do is the air permitting, make sure that we report all the emissions come out. And I will say this, that both power plants, we monitor NOx, sulfur, CO2, CO, acid gases, a whole bunch of mercury, got all those, and we do that every minute of the day that plant is on. A lot of people do not understand that the equipment that we we help do the reporting with that, but we have equipment that does 1 minute readings, and that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful for
Yeah.
people to realize like anything that the city's doing is highly regulated and monitored to make sure breathing is safe, around our plants, and water quality is good, and all of these different things that basically you're making sure that we're all safe in a lot of different areas. One last question that I have, because we haven't touched much on it, is the landfill. Is there anything that you could want to mention about the landfill?
Yeah, I have to say that they've kind of coined a phrase, it's the Hilton landfills out there. I've been really impressed. The folks out there keep a very clean landfill. Not that other communities don't, but that's just kind of their way of saying we want it to really look nice, front door that's out there. You got to give those folks credit. They deal with a lot of stuff that you don't want. That's why you put it in the garbage. And they have to deal with everything that comes out there. And sometimes it's not so pleasant, but they do it very professionally, and I'm very proud of those folks that are out there. And they're constantly trying to figure out how to make it better, safer, more efficient, and just exciting. And I know it's a little younger group right now, but this is great. I mean, they're happy with what they're trying to get done. And when you hear comments like, I'm glad I come to work and I like to work in landfill, there's not that many people want to work in a landfill or a wastewater treatment plant for that matter, but I have to say that about city employees. When we have people that work in these not so glamorous jobs, they like what they do. I mean, they see it as a value to the public. They see it's a necessary thing to protect public health. And I have to say, maybe just summarize this, that much of what we do is really public health. I mean, we are, taking the garbage away, we're treating the sewage, we treat the water, we're protecting the air. And if we weren't doing those things, there's probably not enough bed space or doctors or pharmacists to take care of the ills that we have. So, I mean, we're kind of, I wouldn't say we're first line of public health, but we really are. I mean, that's what defines a civilization, is how we protect public health and protect our community.
It's really cool perspective for people that probably haven't heard much about your department maybe. But,
yeah.
And I would just second what you're saying. Like, I've met all of your employees and they're awesome, and they really are very passionate about what they do. And it's cool to see that you guys do an awesome job.
Yeah, and they usually are pretty good to let me know if I need to do something different, which I like. I mean, they keep me on my toes.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, last question. Are we going to run out of space in the landfill anytime soon?
Well, we got about 10 years or so, but we are looking at expansion things and so forth, but that's all part of the planning and get through. So I'm excited about some of the things that we're looking at. But right now they're just at the surface. They can go up above that, so they got some space here. But as Michelle Hill, who's superintendent, will tell me, it only takes one tornado and that can change things pretty quickly. So
That's true.
and so those are things we don't want, but we got to kind of plan for it. But you just gotta be ready when it happens.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna finish up now, but thank you for doing this, and please tell your staff probably are gonna watch this, but thank them too for everything that they do, because they really are awesome people. And so
I can't do my job without them. I mean, they're my co-pilots, so they deserve a lot of this credit. They're behind the scenes. So
cool. Well, thanks for those of you that wanted to watch this, and I'm gonna turn it off here. Thanks for joining us today.